Hello, America and modern nations. Regarding the borders of each modern nation, since before the founding of each modern nation, that was already applied to the phenomenon of borders, relevant to where and how there is the cell body, the cell nucleus, and the cell wall, /S, and they connect with living bodies, manifest this way, and with plant bodies. Only the extent of it is debatable, but offensively, scientists have theories that incorporate physical delusions simultaneously, qualities of premises treatments that can't be defended, and ourselves at the same time, from what exploits that as criminal insidiousness natures of premises treatments, positive and negative, of identity treatments. Note therefore of names, titles, locations, industries. Everyone capable of defending that and affording people a quality of fact treatment nature to report actual uses of instances. A breaching method before our founding parents were born was a database relationship that had everyone enslaved, sickly distinctly, to keep how sickly non-distinctly from being discerned. While that was being sustained, it knew that everyone would have to blame other things, others themselves. It propagated that. It maintained, knew that it would self-cultivate that self-defense through abridged sciences, increasingly self-valued. Increasingly, what nature would then demonstrate negative value nature progressions, acts in relationship to. What modern nations share is victimhood to a predicate acts delivery system method that knew it would have to counter negative value nature progressions, acts and natures, increasingly self-valuing roles as premises treatments, as names treatments, through a method that makes use of quick instances, real to amended with them, completely made up. Uses of people's names, sense and sensibilities, everyone speaking through others. So they have the context where and how we are strangers, where people want to speak about that and don't want to speak about that, both employed. Breaching method and collusion, fake sides of correlation nature. So there are depths of theater /S that are formal, that are interbranch, formal too, that way too. They're formal private with them, and overt criminal enterprises, and hundreds of nations shared policing here and there, suits and ties, data collection, premises treatments, defenses. Everything, treatments of everything. See words like security, words like privacy, words like identity. These are sequence shift roles. For example, first, that are employed on and off campuses connected, where they're putting people of each age to fake locations because of the extent of how where there are peaceful contexts, what they call peaceful, that are only ones capable of, only positions too, capable of countering the real causes of negative value nature progressions, acts and natures, acts like criminal, like predicate acts, natures like criminal insidiousness natures, wrongdoers, wrongdoing itself as a criminal insidiousness nature. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a police force, I'm not a criminal, I'm not a judge, but originally, and not a politician, originally and still, those only three branches of government and the military was recorded how effectively having been maintained, criminally foreign influenced, through that which was already entrenched intercolonies, which couldn't help being interstates, because the republic for which we stand had been revealed by ancients before criminally foreign influence took over, tactically denatured, and so not and pseudo preserved educational processes, methods, therefore premises treatments. So this method knew. It tricked, hurt, persuaded, forced, took as awe the phenomena of modern nations through defenses of themselves as identities individually grouped and together. That would increasingly have to self-value. The real causes of all locations, areas, and states and sciences abridged, criminally foreign influenced, self-valued roles, pretending others simultaneously, forcing leaders to collusion, foreign and domestic, individually grouped and together, whatever, to keep that stupid. It's the same uses of identity, the ground locations of religious locations, tied to their roles with this, with where and how, when things unfold, with the interbranch, with investigators. They're being used to lock people to collusion with predicate acts that are against everyone. But again, in its inter-private campuses and inter-public schools, because it's databases oriented, since before computers, because it is locations oriented, more and more originally and still, which it keeps that more and more needing to value roles with that everywhere at once. It's increasingly need to value that having been. Statutes and precedents are increasingly and were increasingly needed to hide life progressions, needed to hide uses of their natures. Natures pretending passions and emotions, even believing that Marbury versus Madison meant other than it does. Even believing that George Washington had roles or wishes to be involved with slavery other than he did. No one had free speech at the time. If they tried to show their honest roles with trying to bring the Constitution unabridged, they would have been censed by the breaching method. They had everyone sickly victims, and that's sustained for that. To have not just the sense and sensibilities, to use Jane Austen's phrase, of people. To have our nervous system, not just our nervous system. In other words, ignoring sequence shifts, ignoring predicate acts against others, self-valuing roles, needs to blame the causes of that on other things other than themselves, even when real too, because there are more names there. Even though everyone's all victims, it's not to say who's blamed, it's to show what was going down, the method /S. I taught best boxing, so forgiveness is not to give up or anything, it's not to debate about such. It's about what is true always. There was a breaching method, a human fact keeping nature breaching method that was pretending that it could speak for positive. It was trying to, everyone that was trying to do it, it was simultaneously doing it as a criminal insidious in nature, criminally legalized. Because that was here, that was the sophistication here, that was the method here. Since before our founding parents were even born, before their parents were even born. These pathology of homes across the globe, they were designed to cause, in suburbs, designed to cause negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures. Harford reveals that, in other words, then they have the suburban / urban. Designed then to have homes that would be built to be converted down the road to 2-family and 3-family homes. Knowing that this would cause negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures. blaming other things because nature would demonstrate this, while it's still demonstrating how suburbs are tactically identity of the grounds, identity of relationship to itself, natural, native, pure. How that denatured syntactically, it demonstrates. Nature demonstrates why and how. What revealed the Republic is not being allowed free speech, and but that his role is preventing that needs to pretend other originally still. So they pretend passions and emotions, valuing, also roles with speaking through others, how they use groups, how they use locations, and again, the sense and sensibilities and the nervous system of people has to go with the uses of all the locations originally still in relationship to databases. But this was using knowing that they would have to hide lie progressions per roles with predicate acts that are on off campuses connected. And as roles with a whole bunch of other countries that are victim predator odds there too. Like, for example, we have psychology. This is only part of it involved. As some of the private and the people that run the prisons, on and off the state prison offices, on and off the state judicial branch offices. Originally and still, that is corrupt. Uses of all along roads and routes that are completely fact-treatment nature oriented, sequence oriented, sense and sensibilities oriented, where tactically needs for strangers to self-value uses of positive treatments and of negative treatments and collusion. For example, with mass identity thefts and frauds, styles and motivations, leveraged originally and still by the breaching method itself, one thing. And so again, what was actually observed and observable is where and how roles, the breaching method roles were already standing. Identities of the ground, names, titles, locations, all. And again, uses of that, not just from those locations, used from other locations, which is uses of other sequence relationships. That they knew identity of locations, industries, and things like that would have. They knew that this is a method that shows all identities of sophistication, where they could discern where they're going to need to hide lie progressions by getting over on the correlation nature of each age of fact treatment natures, identities. It knew that they would have to do it ahead of time. So no one ever spoke about what really we could and should have done for our elderly and elderly homes. And per the uses of locations next to every location. It's also tied to how they knew they could, get every, individually grouped it together. They could have each modern nation self-value roles, criminally foreign influence, needing to counter it. Victim predators, incapable of it, delusions rotten as rules, crimes, predators, self-valued increasingly, simultaneously. So they use the right to lie to the news, to pretend integrity, because they have to do business, but not one nation had integrity individually grouped in together. So either you ignore all the nations and you don't try to even work as a species, and it's even worse, or you just keep going with this pursuit to ties counters to it, all still used remotely, individually grouped and all together, or you do it this way. We use the pantheism as science. We use pantheism theory, which is that the ancients were really about one identity of volume /S, which is distinctly three identities of volume. For example, the order of the finite coming from the order of the inherent. For the example, the order of the active coming from juxtaposition of that, the inherent, active, and the progressive, which is another identity of one. For example, the cell nucleus, cell body, and the cell wall are physically discernible. They manifest distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously as the same identity of volume. And so their identities are shared in each other. It is just how volume science works, not music science works, not music theory. All exceptions and exception nature are in demonstration of the same thing. Bach saying. Remember that criminal insidiousness was criminally legalized here. And things that were criminal to legalize. I mean, things were natural and shouldn't be criminalized were criminalized. And all that for, motivations, nature's needs were real and discernible and having been discerned. But everyone missed there was more to that. There are more motivations, nature's needs, and interests, uses of all those identity ground locations. Uses of where they went to school. Uses of where they didn't go to school. Self-valued means to, all big world / small world leveraged for our favor and against us is both, they are both inclusion. Nothing is binary. Where and how we're using correlation natures mean. Nothing is binary alone. There is what is going to be positive. There's what is actually positive and true. As the value of the sequence nature, which is increasing. So I leave value of the value of sequence true before the order of the finite now. Before physics, there was an identity of order that generated physics. And so it was distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously itself as physics. And it never stopped being distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously itself. And it never stopped having one identity of relationship to its own identity of volume. And the value of that, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously itself. And only increasingly. So it is the phenomena of being and having been. A distinct identity of invisible but still discernible. Just as there are 5 distinct identities of invisible but still discernible. And there is that is what is generating more and more forever nature or infinity nature. And that is more and more of its identity of simultaneous nature that is positive or negative to itself. And this is most probably where heaven and hell came from. And proofs of this require a quality of fact-keeping nature that is afforded sense and sensibilities that don't have physical delusions and that aren't pretending to be about science. They call people names. It says right in the beginning of the Old Testament. All you have to do is understand right up to here. In other words, they have complete possession over all identity ground locations, narratives, and uses of arrays of opinions. It's still inclusion in many ways, where and how it counts. For example, where and how everyone are self-valuing sequence shifts roles. For example, people say, forget the relevance of the past. Meanwhile, since pounding drums, all formal database stewards, a certain kind of victim, certain kind of victim reaction that was employed. All the reactions of all the victims, A through Z, involved with colonists, the colony state of states, between countries too. Those countries too were already, they were modern nations. We're going to say ancient, semi-ancient, modern, and present. And what they left out with the modern and present and with the semi-ancient are the recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, self-valued, criminally foreign influence database relationships and uses of them, and identity thefts and frauds, styles of logic, and uses of the premises treatments that it takes to defend that, and of the role of self-valuing rules predators that pretend people have to sue courts without having them ahead of time follow mandated law and write true things into databases. You know, they're hiding things from higher courts because of how the courts are distinctly victims that reacted in ways that were maintained, originally still used remotely, and knowing they'd have to pretend other. Now, so they even use methods like having the news media attach me and others to fake words, fake locations, lie about how that unfolded. So then they lock future uses of the identities of networks, of the identities of their identity ground locations, of the ones next to them, involved with uses of people's names as knaves, uses of their premises and their evidences to justify their pretending passions and emotions, leaving out the sequence shifts, what really came first. See, this is also why and how, on a mass scale, everyone is forced to speak through others, because of what really is the cause of locations with shootings and things like that. Because it is also recorded how those same identity ground locations that deal with the people they catch involved with shootings, they have them not only leaving out a whole bunch of stuff that they did against those people, but those people are kept needing to hide the same sequence shifts, finite, active, progressive lives with them, and uses of that roles. Originally and still, because of how the identity ground locations are having been used. Because of how difference is being and having been used. Because of how contrast was maintained self-valued. Measured. When they bring up the border issue. So this is where they have subjects here and there, individually grouped and together, nations maintained, that everyone wants to speak, and the private tie to them. Always per creed. See, then they can only pretend that they're defending themselves dishonestly. In other words, they have to increasingly self-value rules with sequence shifts outside of courts and inside of courts, like inside the Ninth Circuit, right before the World Trade Center attack and leading up to it. People also involved in all kinds of programs with the kids, like Cub Scouts, and like people associated with hospitals and military and EMS and sciences and science teachers and everyone's family members and neighbors in ways that no one realized because of how the sensibilities are being used. No one realized because no one's allowing mandated law to be used. No one's realizing because no one's allowing writing on time and per all exceptions and exception nature and demonstration of it. There is originally and still offensive evidence reception racketeering roles and natures only capable of being victim predators. And this is maintained from consciously, intercampuses, public and private. I don't know Fred Grisey. Never saw him with a house on my street, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed with others associated with him. And a Wethersfield police chief from 1 or more years ago, and the transition between police chiefs. This is also where other police chiefs, other forms of police and police departments, and former director of the FBI in his defendant capacities, how they are involved through time with methods on off campuses and intercampuses and intra-campuses, uses of corners, timed treatments of identity thefts and frauds, acts and methods actually recorded, their roles with falsified police reports, attaching little kids to fake conversations and ties to their officers themselves, even on the police department, because they had their little rats that when they were victims, when they were kids, where they were involved with identity thefts and frauds, where they have people directed to go have investigations and write police reports that are falsified, and they don't even give you writing in them. They just put a charge. And then they pretend they made mistakes and they put fake things in databases. No one realizes this. They have all time treatments at courts. Use all ways, too fast, too slow. They even go down to lying about people's physical behavior, lying about what's actually recorded audio and video on those locations. That's why they can't afford to have audio and video on courts actually. That's why they need to self-value roles, all these means and methods and natures of interest for people needing to hide the same things with them. What's really tied to the crazy rioting and things like that. That's how they're being taught to speak in collusion on and off campuses and through the ones pretending to be against that. Because of all that is involved with the method, the one method, the breaching method that was here before our founding parents were born. That had everyone that way. So if anyone tried to have a unity, before they could have that unity, be unity, they would have to argue with themselves. And they would have to make defenses of their arguments with themselves using physical delusions, using criminal foreign influence, using other people's names, in a context that would sense that. So in other words, it's against the law. So then it would come down. In other words, it's like a virus that took over the human fact-cheating nature. And so, all we have to do is use what is true always. Not deny exceptions in exception nature, the slightest one. Then you can't value the order of the finite. So we can make this the 5 God variables. And we can make this YouTube ground. I'll gather around. If we do it, we're not going to take money for all the money or resources. We'll go to pantheism as the science of evolution, what causes negative value nature progressions, acts and natures was engineered from the. This is what the suburbs as is will cause, let alone the suburban / urban, and where and how it already played through the phase that since before cars and those laws that were involved with the slavery of everyone, that had slavery sickly distinctly with color, specifically to keep everyone blaming other things other than themselves for those slavery laws against everyone, since before cars, that forced this pathology of houses, this identity of the ground tactically denatured, each year harder, swept away. Oh, it looks nice though. Of course it would look like garbage. in other words. But it's causing negative value nature progression using nature system. The problem with the environment are nature treatments. What is nature? Nature is what identity is, which is relationship to positive and negative simultaneously. But from and as, identity is also from and as what is greater than that and more finite than it. It is greater than and more finite than anything temporary, individually grouped or together. It generated that. Two identities. Part of what demonstrates this is the value of sequence true. Here now. Everywhere now. Where subject treatments are being made. Where these are treatments of where and how we are a value/value progression. Because more and more identity is being made. More as forever nature. We are a value/value progression. See suits and ties. See counters. Rise, all rise. Betrayal tribes. So we have to take, that podium as theaters, individually grouped and together, to the light. Boxing is might. Boxing, it teaches things. It's more probable that boxing, the martial arts, and wrestling were revealed in ancient times as a part of the science/S that demonstrated to the ancients who understood and all A through Z, they saw value. They couldn't believe anyone would forget what causes how to cause the positive value nature progressions, action natures, and how nature demonstrates negative value nature progressions, action natures, if we don't use its system. So the 5 God variables are 5 distinct identities of positive. And if they're not simultaneously positive, then it's a criminal insidious nature or positive treatment in relationship to and as a premises treatment. So if you say, because A, therefore B, A is a premise of a conviction or of an opinion, which would be B. But see, that was a quality of fact treatment nature as criminal insidiousness nature. So where someone overtly could use how they had treatments of color and how they had justifications of it, see, but that they leave out from the subject. Because the justifications of it show both sides wrong and being used and having been used remotely. But it does so out of sequence and differentially constantly, because it also the whole time was using the fake sides identities, using real counters to in other words, the people exploiting their roles as the only ones that can counter other nations that hurt us are also people self-valuing roles as the only people that could counter it, blaming on other things, others themselves, what they know they do together, individually grouped together here and there. So they have people from my grammar school I had nothing to do with. I'm involved with Debbie Gold. I don't know, she's a stranger to me. She pretended I had a conversation with her out of the context. And then I don't know what they put in the database. That's how they do little tricks to unfold conversations between behind their back and the fake conversations with people. I was supposed to give a letter to my father. I never gave it to my father. I was also need because this is also they make confessions through statements like that, where they're simultaneously communicating that they're gonna pretend other. So she was pretending other. These are also a whole bunch of natures of federal criminals before they got caught. And she was a mayor's daughter. And she has a brother I never saw around, never met. But he was also recorded, confessed, one of the people involved with. There's people involved with forensics locations with FBI and state police and Wethersfield police, a Wethersfield police chief also, and 1 years ago. And people with the name Dillon families, and people next to their neighbor, people on 2 Route Highway and Fox Hill, I don't know, sought me out to make all these confessions as strangers. Then they pretended to know me. And that's the only context they could pretend to know me, and they pretend they wanted to keep that secret. In other words, they were also involved with all kinds of cases and investigations, falsified police reports they've had with the victim predators, with the killers even, and the people that put them away and in jail that watched them. They were involved with the same natures of predicate acts, self-valued with locations together. For example, the body dumping spot of the serial killer is one of the ones involved with many people associated with people with the name Joe DeMauro, recorded, confessed, and demonstrated on Trinity College and on CCSU, involved with fabricating police reports and involved with police forms that put me and with other countries and other people to fake locations on campuses, fake walking with other people, because these are campuses that are filmed 24/7, but nobody's watching this. And all this is relevant, for example, as people that were involved from Connecticut, interbranch, private, and intermilitary, interservices, interlocations, like all along Church Street in Old Wethersfield. Strangers sought me, confess out, record this. They're also involved with all kinds of intercampuses, predicate acts, and natures of abuses of each age of fact treatment nature, simultaneously with that, in other words. And they also pretend that it's personal when we respond to it. In other words, because these are people involved with former director of the FBI and his defending capacities leading up to and in the World Trade Center attack. Also with the news media, telling lies, using the, quote, right to lie, unquote, where they don't have the right to lie. Where there are judges and they're prosecuted, there's a Hartford courts, recorded, confessed, and demonstrated, confirmed before and after the World Trade Center attack, spreading lies about me, attaching me to fake words with other people that I had communications with and ones I didn't, attaching me to fake locations with them because they affected people to roles with them with offensive evidence reception racketeering and identity racketeering with locations with people from my grammar school. I didn't tell them that. I didn't tell them my sources, but these are my sources. It's recorded, confirmed after, even in a case, and regarding a traffic stop. But there was way much more involved with it. So Hartford courts were involved with the deposition of defendant, former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, former standing chairperson on Racketeering Influence and Corrupt Organization Act. Also involved with people, including people with Los Solitos and other overt criminal enterprises and relevant body dumping spots, roles, and uses of it, and roles with identity thefts and frauds, incidences timed, because they have offensive evidence perception racketeering since founding. Then when did that stop? When did they stop to teach everyone about how our founding parents had to hide their roles by pretending theater, pretending to entertain what couldn't be entertained, and the Constitution defended unabridged? That's where we're supposed to teach about what's simultaneously recorded actually. They're playing tricks with truths used as lies. For example, regarding, they offensively tell people how to use evidence, use theory, use scientific process. See, they have how they're telling people to use scientific process, increasingly self-valuing how the other sciences, as each science, how they're individually grouped together, criminally foreign influence, delusions raw, abridged states of themselves. And where they blame them on the correct things, it is also mixed with delusions and with it them blaming the others and missing all that is to that. And missing how all that tied to that and them themselves are used remotely. Scientific process and honesty and passions and emotions allowed that. It reveals how to bring injunctive reliefs together. No one's even denying it. And if someone denies the needs for it, their logic will reveal the more proofs of needs for it. See, but rather than allow this quality of fact treatment nature, we're forced to respect identity treatments that don't respect science, that don't respect identity, which is about the invisible but still discernible. Nature shows that. See, but we have the experts on physical delusions who are still not just delusions wrought, but they are simultaneously criminally foreign influenced and having been. And so, for example, they use their locations to fabricate audio and video. And they knew that that was used remotely. Even the investigations of the World Trade Center, Harvard Hospital, and Harvard campuses, they have roles with a whole bunch of other countries. See, when things unfold and insurance companies involved with that, everyone's saying, well, I'm not a doctor, though. There are doctors of mental health that have roles with their databases and their family members and their colleagues, nurses, their family members, everyone's neighbors, people that work for the Wethersfield Police Department through time, who answer the phone for them, people who live next to schools, who call them up, who are criminally foreign influenced. Delusions wrought, roles with falsified police reports, attach people to fake locations, using all exception nature to pretend other. In other words. So one time I went to Anthony Agman's house at night. That was tied to some judges and some medical people and ones with badges who are and with a whole bunch of other countries, with the corner of Town Line Drive and the South Steen Highway, and with the other mobile gas station there through and all along that route that goes by the other mobile gas station from Church Street in Old Wethersfield, along Main Street, all the way to Central Connecticut State University, and uses of corners along there, all with people tied to roles with predicate acts, with this Debbie Gold and mayors of Wethersfield. They also have these lawyers who are ones with badges, who are fabricating audio and video, coaching them to hide lie progressions and roles with drugs and medicines crimes, with sexual crimes, with against each age of fact nature, also through the men and women that are the only counters. They also uses of, the facts that they are men and women tied to where and how they're attaching us to fake behavior, fake comprehensions, fake words. And they are switching names and forging names when we are there, when we are in their presence, while simultaneously knowing they already used methods, self-value, like pretending people don't speak clear. We have courts that have been offensive evidence racketeering natures. Victims, just like the overt criminal enterprises, recorded differentially, constantly criminally foreign influence with them. Recorded how kept needing to hide roles with the same predicate acts relevant on my street, tied to the names on the campuses I went to, and the roles with the instant uses of the instances near them. They know. So, Zano. There are a whole bunch of people with the name Zano I barely know. I only know from him involved with offensive evidence racketeering, with this, in other words, with the agencies, and with the locations and the names involved with Weathersfield Community Center, all sides of it. There's also a Jody Pierce that said Paul Apted, and a DeMoros that confessed and recorded a Paul Apted, and his sister, who also confirmed, I don't know them, on Facebook. They're involved when I was a kid, too, pretending to know me. And maybe someone took a picture one time. I was in the presence for a real second outside of the campus, involved with recorded predicate acts involved between private school kids and inter-campus, and houses that live next to the campuses that coordinated with lie progressions and uses of them as identity thefts and frauds roles relevant to their roles with actually recorded with falsified police reports and uses of them, and their roles with methods of not letting people know people's names, and as their roles with people that we know the names of, and it makes it sound like we're in a location and communication with them that never were. If we respond to that's what they've been doing. Debbie Gold did that. She did that with a whole bunch of federal people involved with a whole bunch of federal criminals before they got caught. And since that's relevant, because she also has roles with that, with people still playing wire crime methods and uses of Facebook on and off the campuses, including medical campuses. There are various Hartford courts involved with doctors at Hartford Hospital, and with a Judge Killian who attached me to fake words, record himself faking things into databases. He rolls with Facebook pages, and 3 times they used the Hartford Hospital forced mental evaluation to hide what I caught them doing with the Dillon family and with my new and past neighbors involved with predicate acts on and off Trinity College, on and off Central Connecticut State University, that was simultaneous because they were used intercities to bring up more subjects and names and to delay my response, my response to them obfuscating justice and furthering extortion against me and identity thefts and frauds against me on and off campuses connected. Now, these are also roles with a proven child abuser principal since before he got caught, and they had the WFSB and other Connecticut media recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed predicate acts rules with parents of some of the kids on the campus where they had a community meeting about me. And so these are people that are through time involved intercities, intercampuses, predicate acts, attaching me to fake words and fake locations on those campuses that are filmed 24/7. So and they have deans and their family members also criminally involved. I had nothing to do with the family member of Dean Judd, involved with the Hartford courts and the FBI and other agencies with predicate acts on and off cases and with depositions, their uses of depositions, and roles with uses of other people's names on both sides of a 2006 case involved with the buildings of Hartford, Connecticut, next to, and the locations next to Fox Connecticut News, and next to, there's like a they changed the names of the owners of the clubs of the buildings downtown Hartford. These are also people with the military, foreign and domestic in collusion, kept needing to hide lie progressions. These are names that we could get the names of. People associated with a Mark Violet and a Mike Violet and neighbors of them where they are now and where they used to be. Recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed strangers that were influenced to be asked questions about me by investigators and stuff like that, because that's part of the roles, getting locked in. They like an O'Brien family called the police when he was a kid, and made up stuff and left out a whole bunch of stuff they did with how they recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed they're criminally foreign influenced, differentially, constantly, and simultaneously they pretend other. So that's one thing that Debbie Gold said, communicated. She communicated that she was, making things up about me and gonna pretend other, and how they do that. And that's relevant because Joe Aiello and others recorded, confessed, and demonstrated it's relevant to their roles with predicate acts with the locations next to Trinity College. And as their roles with the people on Trinity College that I never had a conversation with, that pretended other. And they are also, the only ones they're also people I only know in context where strangers made all kinds of confessions at once, so they would all go back, and no one would be able to use that, tell the truth about those locations, about how they know other people's names. Because this is where and how those are kids when they're like, and Oliveri family, people along Route 3. That's the first house. There's the first house at the end of the Putnam Bridge, I believe. And that goes towards there's the corn next to it. That goes towards the state judicial branch offices. And then Wethersfield Pizza's on South Dean Highway around there, all the way up there. Those are people involved with sequence shifts. I never saw Maria Vizino in my life until after I graduated from high school. And so that's relevant because John Mayano is involved with sequence shifts with a whole bunch of people and with her neighbors, which she's one of the houses off of Two-Route Highway. I believe her name might be Maria Stocco now, and there's a Steven Stocco. I also never had a conversation with. The only conversation I had with him, and not even a conversation. I asked him to have if Maria was there in response to them, and notes everyone forced to speak to others, and they sought me out too first. No, with this, and then he called the police. He said, so I don't know what he told me. He made up something. And now this is at the time when the police were making stuff up when I caught them with some child abuses of various natures juxtaposed, including sexual. And I'll say this now. They said that, they attached me to saying that in the context I didn't even say it in. So the news media has been hiding their roles with attaching me and others to fake words, fake pleading in cases, fake outcome of cases. Because these are people I caught them with that through time, which actually recorded federal criminals before they got caught, and our police forms in a whole bunch of other countries. Afghanistan has a whole bunch of relationships to the Wethersfield Police Department and to the town offices with the people involved with the doctors and their patients and criminals. And people, like, in other words, there's a person, I don't know if it's his real name or if it's a police people pretending they're legitimately investigating things. With Hartford Hospital, there's a person with the name Carosa. But there are also people with the NHL, or what is it called? The NBA, National Baseball, NBL, Major League, MLB, Major League Baseball, associated with the predicate acts of the Wethersfield Police, forging and switching names over their phone, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed over the last months. These are also people involved with the Wethersfield town offices with the predicate acts, uses of that. These are also people involved with uses of religious locations because their roles with the child abuses and of the identity thefts and frauds. And where they make acting outside of, just like where they make a theater, where they have this side, these people know each other in the movie, in the play or whatever, and these people don't. These people are against each other, these people don't. They're making consciously identity thefts and frauds roles. They're lying about where people the sequence where they came before they're filmed together. They're capturing people out of, they're painting fake things. Our interbranch and the other countries and the overt criminal enterprises, but what's leading their motivations is how they are already used remotely. So in other words, we don't have an identity of sophistication speaking for and as the law. We have criminals and cities of this nature speaking for and as the law. That's why and how science never spoke for Hartford, Connecticut, let alone New York City, let alone why and how simultaneously such is manifest across the globe and with nations that have gasoline-powered means right now to make paradise everywhere, easily affordable, to control everything, in other words, to bring a scale of infrastructure, fathomable. We have to admit the tactically denatured identity of the grounds, identity of relation to itself. Native pure, we must be native, hyper-native. Each country, we could do this. So we're all on the same scale of infrastructure. Means to it, we just convert everything. Just admitting it. Then the sides of highways, we get spots we can admit. We get space where we can make temporary space reliefs to things that will change the nature of things, that change, that permit the protraction of logic that doesn't leave out the slightest detail. That which is capable of revealing evolution's fruits and gifts. Evolution science does not leave out the ground. I'll gather around. Vaccine. I teach you things long. So there are programs with UConn and with Trinity College and with Central Connecticut State University that were criminally foreign influenced leading up to the World Trade Center attack and since. Their roles with pilots, their family members, their roles with the uses of people's neighbors, and of their roles with corners. So my past neighbors confessed demonstrable court. Also, others involved with confessions of the police over the phones. And just through time, there are a whole bunch of people tied to a Smith family, tied to a Dr. Zeman involved with other doctors, with drugs and medicines crimes, with the Wethersfield police who answer the phones for them too, Mendez police, and the Smith family, and some guy associated with people associated with recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. He confirmed also. I don't know him. He sought me out to make it. What's his name? Dr. Dingleberry or Dr. Dewberry. So there's a whole bunch of people from Hartford Hospital that are involved with, and since. A Leahy family pretended whole fake conversation with me. I never had a conversation with them in my life. They did this with various courts, personally involved with them, with locations, with predicate acts, and their roles with the predicate acts and with their family members and people tied to them, with the undercountries too, on and off the campuses involved, on and off the shopping centers involved. So they're making, in other words, they also have the confession, in other words, respond for them. And I'll show you how to fix it. Follow mandated law. Because the Wethersfield, if you call up and use simple sentences regarding what's actually recorded on Facebook, for example, there are houses next to the schools that are recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with predicate acts on the campuses, with some of the parents that were involved when they were kids, with criminally foreign influenced roles, with falsified police reports, and with identity thefts and frauds, and with instances on campuses and off campuses. Even though it was forced, tricked, or persuaded them through our own, it was also through our own who are criminally foreign influenced, differentially, constantly. That's also recorded. For example, but that's relevant to where and how they have the overt criminal enterprises, plural, involved with their narratives. In other words, they have it, all this recorded. regardless if they're lying about what they did and things like that. That's what's being said. That's what's on the record, on and off courts, with the overt criminal enterprises using my name and the ones involved with my Weathersfield police chief's family members